If you've been on Twitter or Instagram over the past week, and if you specifically follow people who work with fighting games or Def Jam or anything hip hop related, you've definitely seen this post. This one right here. Yeah. And you've definitely seen the negative reactions that post has gotten. If you've been around as long as I have, you'd pretty much know that this is definitely not the first time. We've seen something similar happen in 2020. So one of the earlier news that we'd heard from Def Jam themselves was on their Twitter, where they basically requested their fans to help them get to 1 million, and if they did, there would be some news of a new Def Jam game. Well, they're at 1 million now. It's 2022, and we still haven't heard anything. And that's unfortunate. And that's one of the first instances where people began to grow frustrated with Def Jam and the way that it's been addressing the whole video game situation. It seems like Def Jam is constantly putting out a lot of news and like a lot of teasers teasing the potential of a new Def Jam game. At this point, this video is basically here to ask the question, will we ever get any news on a new Def Jam game? Because the streets are talking, bro. They want another Def Jam. Even after the failure or the negative reception that was Def Jam Icon, people still hold on to the nostalgia and the novel idea of having rappers come together and whoop each other's asses. It's amazing. It's like it sells itself. It hadn't existed before, but now that it does, it's like, why haven't we been doing this all the time? But before we get into a lot of reasons as to whether or not can we even get a new Def Jam, and if it's even plausible to suggest in the year of our Lord 2022, here's a little context. The Def Jam series is a beloved fighting/wrestling game franchise that famously features record label mainstays and celebrities that are popular at the time. Def Jam Vendetta, which was the first game in the series, was released in 2003, which was a wrestling-inspired arcade game with an over-the-top presentation that oozes so much style and is simply a product of its time. With the crazy roster of real-life rappers and an amazing soundtrack, Def Jam Vendetta was a fish out of water but did an amazing job in making a splash in the video game industry. It was then followed up by Def Jam Fight for New York, which was released in 2004, which basically served as a greater expansion on everything that worked in Def Jam Vendetta. Yeah, we're seeing a bigger roster being introduced, and it just doubles down on everything that made the first game great. In 2007, we got the long-awaited Def Jam Icon, and unfortunately, this was served as a radical departure from everything that everyone loved about the Def Jam series up until this point. We didn't get to see the Aki engine. It was basically inspired and used a lot of mechanics from Fight Night Round 3. It did away with a lot of the things that made the Def Jam franchise really good. We're talking about its over-the-top presentation, the easy to pick up game mechanics and hard to master nature of the overall game, as well as doubling down or cutting back rather on the amount of characters that were available on the game once it launched. So it was quite unfortunate that that was the case with 2007, and it really didn't pick up steam after that. Development for Def Jam Icon 2 has been confirmed. However, it shortly got cancelled after EA Chicago got closed down for not meeting profitability targets. And since then, people have been wanting to see another Def Jam game, and we haven't heard any news since. So people clearly want a new game, or at the very least a remaster. So I'm gonna ask this one specific question. Can we see a new game, or at the very least a remaster? So let's look at a couple factors. People are talking about it. When you look at the posts themselves and all the responses that we're constantly getting, people still want to see a new game. The nostalgia is there. People from my age group, which is like what, in their mid to late 20s, people want to see a new Def Jam game because of how awesome it was. The simple mechanics and having all those rappers there. I feel like I'm repeating myself, but I think it just rings true. And even if it might not be measurable in the way that things, like in the responses that people have, I will acknowledge that the landscape in gaming has definitely changed. The games that are being released also reflect that. But however, the very concept of what Def Jam is definitely a winning formula. People love fighting games, but they don't necessarily love all the work that goes into it. I mean, as a fighting game player myself, I don't find an issue in spending time in the lab and learning a character, even though more often than not, it's a super annoying character and I'm going to get hate mail afterwards. But still, it's fun being in the lab. But I know for most people, what they can appreciate is being able to do cool things without having to do a lot of hand gymnastics to do so. Def Jam catered to that. Its whole system was based on easy execution. The further into the community you go, you then begin to realize that it's an easy to pick up game, but hard to master. There's a core fighting game scene that still supports Def Jam till this day. A couple days ago, I was watching the CEO Top 8 for Def Jam Fight for New York. That's a game that came out in 2004, mind you, and there's still a Top 8 in 2022. That means that you got a whole bunch of people who still play the game ever since it came out. There's a lot of support for this game. So even if we're talking about a whole bunch of casual people, there's a lot of people within the fighting game community who still show up and support this game thoroughly. And I'm like, why wouldn't you want to cater to that? You know, people love your game, and clearly they've put in a lot of hours into developing tech. That just shows the staying power that that IP has within the fighting game community. And also, there seems to be an ongoing support from the hip-hop community. The fact that Ice-T in 2020 openly spoke about wanting to support or see a new Def Jam game just basically shows that there is that desire, and there's a void to be filled with the development of a brand new Def Jam. I just realized that this entire video is just me rambling on about why a new Def Jam would make a lot of sense. But honestly, it does. The more that I think about it, I feel like it does. Come on now, stop teasing people. Deliver to the streets.
I'm gonna take your tongue out and lick my ass with it.
Another talking point, and like another reason why I think it would be interesting, is like the potential for the roster that's included in the game. Rap has changed. That goes without saying. And that means that there's a lot of Rabid fans who will support properties that feature rappers that they love, and rappers famously love video games, so it's highly unlikely that they're going to not want to be a part of something like this. But then, on a side note, something that could probably be delved into on its own separate video, what would the roster look like? However, a concern of mine when it comes to the roster, when it comes to something like Def Jam and developing that, it's just simply what happens with controversy. Do we even consider that? I was not cognizant of decisions that were being made when the first Def Jam or any of the Def Jam games, when they were considering who to feature on their roster. I don't know if controversies in the real world affected who got selected and got placed in the game. I don't know if that would be a factor today, but the roster potential is definitely crazy. I could see Playboy Cardi, I could see Jack Harlow, I could see Big Lotto, I could see NBA Youngboy, I could see Stormzy. There's so much potential for this, and you could even have a DLC rollout and theme them. Or if you want to have a bunch of people from Jamaica come through, you can call it the Where You Come From pack. You know, like the music video. You've seen the music video. If you haven't, this is the music video I'm talking about. And all those dudes make them a combat pack. Have an 88 Rising pack. Include Joji. Include Crip Mac. Include Kendall Jenner. I don't care. I mean, if she's interested in being in something like this, hell yeah, I'd support that. There's a lot of fun that could be had with what a Def Jam in 2022 looks like. And just me riffing off the top of my head gets me excited for what that potential looks like. And of course, it goes without saying that should it be developed, it would more likely to be well received if it uses the Aki engine, or at the very least developed with that presentation and those mechanics in mind. But on the other side, there's a couple of things that make me feel uncertain about the potential for a new Def Jam game. Licensing could potentially be a nightmare. Take Grand Theft Auto Definitive Edition, like the trilogy. Yeah, that thing. Yeah, that still happened. What, 2 years ago? I'd found out that not a lot of the music that were in the original games are going to be featured in the final release. And then to me, it's like, at this point, why even do the remaster? Licensing is tough, and working with a lot of these record labels in order to get music in and to get specific characters and the likenesses of certain people could prove to be a logistical nightmare. If we're talking about a remaster, then it's definitely going to be really, really tough in order to secure something like that. At the very least, that's what I think. Take the unreleased music that's in Def Jam Fight for New York. How do we then assure that it's going to come back? I mean, I'm sure you can, but I know that it involves a lot of money, and the fact that Rockstar couldn't secure that for a lot of the music that's in Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, then I really don't think that they are safe or devoid of this issue. This is something that's definitely going to follow them. And on top of this, I don't even know how the license looks like. I know EA and EA Chicago were the ones who were developing the Def Jam video game. But what about the Def Jam IP itself, or the name? Is that something that any other developer can scoop up and then make? Bandai Namco or Capcom, can they scoop up the Def Jam name and then develop something? Is that something they can do? I'm not sure. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a dude who's talking about Def Jam. But long story short, if you've made it this far, the point that I'm trying to make is Def Jam is weird for teasing people like this. What's the point of having to do that all that much if you know that nothing is in development? And if it is in development, marketing has been terrible. It would have worked out far better if there was like a big surprise at E3 or at the end of EVO. But anyway, why use this method in order to get this information out? There are better ways to market the development of a game. So even in the best of circumstances, like in the best case scenario, this is a weird marketing decision. And in the worst case scenario, you're just baiting your fans. And that's never good. Issuing out promises and never following through with them just leaves a bad taste in everyone's mouth. You remind people that we have this amazing property, but you don't do anything with it. So I guess the point of this whole video is that listen, Def Jam, people love you, or at the very least, they love the video game franchise. And I think it's best expressed by this clip of Katana Prime at that same tournament, CEO Top 8.
All right,
Yes.
listen, we ain't gonna kill a vibe, but Def Jam, I ain't forget.
Oh, yeah, I
They
forgot.
tweeted one time that if we got the Def Jam account to 1 million followers, they would give us news for a new
I
game.
remember that. I remember that.
Where's our game, yo?